All right, so I'm here with Patrick Matros. And Patrick, tell us just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hi there. Patrick Matros, my name, and I'm a climber trainer from Germany, nearby the world famous Frankenmuir area as a climbing area. And yeah, I'm working as a university professor for sports science in my main job. And beside that, I'm a trainer. I have trained Alex Megos together with Sticky Corp for quite a long time now. I'm still a passionate climber, try to deal with this new school climbing stuff, and trying hard that stuff. And yeah, beside that, I'm a father of two kids, 5 and 9. They like to climb too. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and you published like loads of materials on, climbing training and performance, and even like books and online. You have such a good online presence.
Yeah, that's right. I published a few books, not so many. Maybe I'm a little bit too lazy. I should work harder for that. I published this together with Sticky Corp, this GimmeKraft thing, GimmeKraft book, which is kind of a collection of exercises. It's not kind of training theory or stuff. We really wanted to close this gap that there was like in the climbing world, not much about this new power exercises or strength exercises. So we just had the idea to write this book for it. And people liked it. And meanwhile, of course, this is a much bigger topic now, strength training, athletic training for climbing. There are a lot of more exercises. And then we followed up with this ACT training stuff, which is more like functional training stuff.
And you teamed up also with Volker Schoeffel on that project.
Volker Schoeffel,
yeah.
We who is a close partner to us. He's living nearby here in Bamberg, which is not far away. So yeah, that's this my book experience, let's say, like this.
Yeah, and I remember when that first kind of GimmeKraft came out, there wasn't that much at that time on like this almost like, you call it new age, but more like functional training, like more kind of full body movement and training that really kind of mirrored where climbing started going, kind of in this trend from maybe, let's say, the past decade. And maybe you can speak to that, like maybe in the past, maybe 10 years, is that an appropriate amount? Where have you seen your experience with climbing kind of change? And maybe then we could bridge that into talks about injury, training, performance, etc.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, we had this, I think this kind of big change is about, let's say 10 or 15 years ago, where we, really big wave from new boulder gyms were built together with some training areas in the boulder gym. And we had this new books like, GimmeKraft or Training for Climbing, the new edition. And then also this new media stuff, social media with Instagram, especially Instagram, where everyone just put in new ideas. And so I think a lot of information came together, was shared, and maybe built the base for this, kind of new step in climbing, where today a lot of new training methods, more detailed training methods just evolved. And I can remember 20 years ago, it was all about pull-ups and French pull-ups and one-arm pull-ups, which, is still not out of sight. You still train with pull-ups, but for example, this functional training stuff, or this kind of learning transfer from an exercise to climbing. What is the benefit from this exercise? These questions were not so answered in detail this 2 decades ago. The people were just training to flex.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the physiques of climbers have changed, the routes themselves have changed. And yeah, really almost like the functional component that seems as though it was missing. I say seems as though because I mean, there wasn't social media, there wasn't this like outpouring of knowledge and information. So there's very likely maybe some people in groups who are doing different types of exercises, but now there's such a flood of information that is available that I almost think it's now the opposite of now there's so much to like sift through.
That's right.
That it's like, well, all right, now what do you do?
Yeah. And I recognize this very often when I speak to especially top climbers. They just are seeking for information and for the better information. And maybe they should more concentrate on one way, even if it's at the first step, it's not so they're gaining not so much progress from it, but in the end, there is a big benefit. And I often think that they are just, because of this Instagram attitude, they're looking for the most interesting, most fancy exercise. And that's not always the solution.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, when I put out my first book, on the cover, I had a resistance band that was wrapped all around my body in different directions. And like my arms out to the side, some like crazy overhead position. And in the end, like, although that looks cool, that's like a very, kind of, you could relate that to climbing. I mean, that is not as transferable as something where you're really using your body to kind of move, identify, and really mimic what's related to climbing, or something that's as transferable even as doing a specific strength exercise that's building. And so it's been interesting to see this trajectory kind of shift and change. I can see it myself, I could see it in others as well, to what to do. And sometimes simpler is actually better, is what you're mentioning as well, or at least sticking with a specific program when there's so much that is out there.
Totally agree. And what I always ask the athletes for is like, okay, I give you some exercises, and you can have some fancy exercises too. But for me, the most important thing is that after a few weeks, you can tell me about the outcome in climbing. Is there something which changed my climbing, or is just the outcome that I can do 3 instead of one arm pull-up? And that would be not my goal, because there should be the outcome and something they can tell me, yeah, my climbing changed in this or that way.
Yeah, and I think what you're mentioning, like these performance metrics, only matter if they translate or relate to what you can do on the wall, right?
Exactly.
So what have you noticed? Let's maybe go and look at maybe some exercises. Let's say, like, what would be an example of an exercise that let's say you watch a climber climb on the wall, and there's something that you notice that is inefficient, not effective, they're not doing well. How can you kind of maybe name something, like something that you commonly notice? And then we'll kind of do a game, and let's pull that into maybe an exercise that would facilitate that, like a supplementary exercise. And maybe we could do a couple of different ideas of this. But do you have one to start? Maybe you notice something on the climbing wall, and then an exercise that can kind of support that, or go along with it.
The first and most important question for me is, okay, is there the lack more on the physical side, or is it more on the technical side? So if you, and this is something, you're always on the edge, that you have to decide, is it more like this or more like that? So for example, if I see that let's say in an overhanging style, there's a lot of lack in shoulder stability, and let's say also in a lack of power, then that would be for me more the physical side, which I say, okay, we should add some exercises to get better in lock off. Now, is it more like explosive power, which is really important and often neglected in climbing, not in new school, but in an old school? Or is it more like basic power, which means maximum power or hypertrophy, that we start with that really base thing? And then I would decide, okay, we have this horizontal and vertical pulling sling, for example. We should train, and we should train in both ways, kind of vertical pulling and kind of horizontal pulling. And then we start with some exercise, maybe some simple exercises for beginners. Let's say some rowing stuff where you, for example, in the rings, where you just do a row going to a, let's say, 90-degree elbow flex, and then you just go in an outward rotation. So let's see, it's like, yeah, here, rowing, and then you go in that way, so that you have this flexing power, combined with some stability, shoulder blade stability. That would be an example, kind of simple example, or for example, for some younger kids in the age of 10, which are not so experienced in strength training. And okay, if I have some more experienced athlete, most of the time it's more like explosive power, that they have a lack on that. And I like to work with power bands then, because it's not all about maximum power in pulling, but more about going fast as possible.
And power bands, you mean like kind of those like really thick resistance bands?
Thick resistance band. Yeah, I think you could, for example, just go on a pull-up bar, putting the power band there for a little bit of support,
like a little bit lift, right?
For a little lift. And what I like for exercise for more experienced climbers is the hips to bar. Often they try to make this muscle up thing, but in the end, a muscle up is something, it's not functional for climbing, because you're not, okay, maybe a
rare scenario, yeah.
As in scenario you have in Fontainebleau, for example, okay, a mantle for at the top of the boulder. But in other ways, the hips to bar exercise is much more related to climbing to gain explosive power.
And talk through that, kind of like describe how that would go. So you have the resistance band that's gonna like unweight you a little bit or provide a little bit of explosive recoil.
Exactly. And when I go with, I often describe them the pattern, how they should do it. And when you can see like this, when I go and make this, it's of course also dangerous for the shoulders. Yeah. It's not so nice, because this is a kind of a pinch position here for the shoulder area. But the hips to bar is more like you go up and then immediately push downwards. Like, let's stand up here. Like you come here and then you go here downwards. And this is without power band is pretty hard. And even then I tell the climbers, please look that it's not this exercise like a calisthenic exercise. I want to make it without power band. That's not our goal. We just want more explosive power for your climbing. Don't make the exercise itself for the goal. That's often a mistake that the climbers make. They watch these Instagram videos. I want to do the whatever front lever or the front lever pull-ups. That's the most fancy thing. No, you want to be a good climber, I think, and a healthy climber. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's really interesting, because you're like, okay, here's the lock off, and here's something we notice that they can't do it very well. Maybe it's performance based. Low level, use resistance bands or rings and just get in that position. High level, use velocity and then go back and do the lock off, right? And see if that like transitions into climbing movement.
Exactly. And yeah, the other way would be some more motor learning problem, which I would decide, okay, that is not related to strength, or maybe there's there's often also climbers who have way too much strength. That's also a common problem. And that's not easy, I have to guess. If someone has too much strength and power, especially strength, and to make him climb better is not easy.
Yeah, what's the tricks? Like, let's say that somebody, I'm trying to think of like movement coordination. Maybe like the feet is like a very easy example, right? Someone that is just super strong climber, but they just have poor footwork. Like where do you start? I mean, you deal with climbers at like a very high level. You've worked with some of the top climbers in the world. I'm sure you've worked with kind of some newer climbers or novice or younger. But how do you train something that's movement coordination? Like what are the tricks?
I thought a lot about that, because this problem is something you get familiar with over the time, like, okay, what can I do? And yeah, my solution, and I get a good experience with it, was make them tired first, let them climb after.
Oh, interesting. And tired through what? Like, how do they fatigue?
For example, if a guy has too much flexing power to get in a good, of course, you can climb this, let this guy climb on slopers, on slabs and stuff like that. But
yeah,
in the end, when it comes to the 45 degrees wall or something, the guy will return to his most common solution, which is flex like hell. So then what about let him do some pull-up series before the boulder, and then, okay, now you're tired, try it again.
Oh, interesting. So pre-fatigue him, so then he can't utilize
exactly.
his like sharpest sword or his
exactly
best skill.
Yeah, that's in a lot of cases that was a good solution to get them in the state. I have more than my flexing strength in my arms, and this is this kind of modern theory, which is like they think about constraints. There's some constraints, and that one is like, my body has this constraint now. I can't flex anymore so strong as I want to do. So then I have to my body has to look for some other solutions. And you can do it with body tension, for example. There are a lot of climbers. It's not always the lack of body tension. There's also some climbers, they have way too much, and they climb with too much tension in the wrong moments, because they cannot generate swing and stuff like that.
And are those more like the static climbers, or ones that just like,
the static,
they don't cut loose as much?
Yeah. And of course, you will not change someone with his physical abilities 180 degrees. That's not possible. Therefore, we are different human beings, and you have some genes in you, and there is this type of static climber with a specific, let's say,
like fast twitch, slow twitch, fiber orientation,
fiber relationship, and I think there are also neuronal specific neuronal patterns in different climbers.
100%.
You can't change that completely, but you have to try to open some potential for them. Like, don't use the easiest solution, which is the easiest for you. That's maybe only a part of your potential.
Yeah, so I get it makes sense for like the biceps. Let's say someone's like overly locking off, using their power, you fatigue out the biceps, and that's like a low, like that area is like rarely injured. So if you pre-fatigue it, it's not going to be such a big deal on the wall. But what do you do if someone, I've ran into this a ton, is climbers that just have really, really strong fingers, and that is their largest strength, but the movement coordination on the wall isn't such a strength. Obviously, you can pre-fatigue the fingers by hangboarding or doing something before they climb, but there is a potential that may leave them a little bit more susceptible to injury because they may just start over gripping. Are there any tricks that you have for someone that's just, they can be constraining variables or any movement patterns, but someone that just over grips everything and they're just so strong in their fingers?
That's a very interesting question, because finger strength in climbing is the key strength. And pre-fatigue techniques here, I use them, but in especially your case to describe, it's not so useful. You're totally right, because it's the key factor of climbing that you have strong fingers. And I know a lot of really good climbers who have criminally strong fingers, but they still complain about a lack of locking power, or even in technique. You have this kind of beginners who have a lot of finger strength and they have a lack in technique. And here is, for me, this the environment, especially climbing on specific boulders, they have to learn. And here we came to sloper climbing. This is the key for me, the number one solution for that. Switch for sloper climbing, and of course not for this kind of right left big move slopers where you can this like pressing here,
power press up,
where we can just compensate again. No, you have really to come back to this Fontainebleau style movement boulders. You can't hold the slopers with finger strength, you have to hold it with body position. And then you can of course go for some special techniques. I like also to touch the climber and bring them in a body position, much more than just describing.
So like they're on the wall, like bouldering, and they're low down, and so you can kind of adjust or shift them.
Exactly. Or you take for example, a TheraBand and move them in a specific direction.
Oh, interesting. So where is the TheraBand, like wrapped around them, or
just wrapped around the body? Exactly. Yeah. And then this is really a good way to, let's say, to cue them without words in a way you want to see them climb. For my opinion, still in learning, in motor learning or in climbing courses, there's too much talking, and people think movement and improving movement is all about cognitive channels, but that isn't. I mean, that's a very, very small percentage is the cognitive way for learning movement. And maybe because people don't want to touch, not so often anymore, even after the whole COVID situation, or nobody wants to touch each other.
keep a distance. And it's actually harder, right? It's like you need to be close to the climber, or if you have a TheraBand on them, you kind of have to hit that kind of right angle. So it seems like there's, potentially is a bigger barrier. But I mean, that's a whole nother like aspect of movement training that sounds like there's not that many, it's not that widely used.
It's not used so much. That's right. Yeah. And my starting to rethink this whole thing was like when I was going back from high level training to kids again. You can't talk
with coaching,
so much
with who you're coaching.
I'm because of my daughter too. And
I was going to ask if that played a role. Okay.
And I went back to kids coaching, because that for me, that was the most
enjoyable.
The way it should be continuous. You work with so long, then with high level climbers, and then you come back to kids. Wow, what's going on? Yeah, and total different. And there's not much talking. They wanna move. They wanna get good feelings, and I learned a lot in that. And I'm sure that a lot of these methods I developed there, they're also really good for older people, for adults, and even for senior climbers. But it's a totally new field, I guess.
Yeah, and I would love to see a training session with you working with the youth teams as well. I mean, that seems like it'd be so much fun as well, right? It's like a level of engagement, which I sometimes feel as though, especially at the higher levels of climbing, things are so serious. There's oftentimes a lot of things on the line for the climbers, and you lose that fun component, that enjoyable component of it.
It's very important. And I have to say, a lot of climbers think that this stars and this top level climbers, they have this top secret training methods they will not talk about. And I always say, don't think that there are this top secret training methods. There is no secret in training. It's only one secret. This is like fun and learning in a way that you have this, let's say, how can you say it? It's like self-efficacy. And this self-efficacy component, you can't underestimate this, or you can overestimate. This is so important, that you control yourself, and you control yourself with fun. And I see it in the different teams of different countries. Of course, there are differences, maybe also cultural differences, but a lot of the teams, they are playing the game. They come together, and the core for a good training is, for me, a training session with your friends, and you have fun, and you find solutions, and you try solutions from the other guys, and you finish a boulder, and you're happy then when the others finish the boulders. That's still the core of a good climbing session, and the most valuable climbing session you can have.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you've spoken to, like, coaching, training at, from the highest level, to youth climbing as well. And maybe let's go from the youth climbing component up to like some of the experience you've had at like the elite level. And I think, you're training with Alex Megos. I mean, he's one of the top climbers, arguably in the world. And I'm sure there's no secret, as you mentioned, to top climbers doing things, but I'm sure there's some components of your training with him you can speak to that have, kind of helped him have built built something more than just, here's the sets, here's the reps, here's the program. Like, can you maybe, I'll keep it open-ended, but can you maybe speak to some of the things you found as successes that you have had when working with Alex? And maybe if coaches are listening to this as well, which I'm sure they are, is, some tips that they can draw from that.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to a mid or long-term training process, for me, the most important thing is that you have this holistic approach. There is some component in training, like physical training, technical training, mental training, but there's also a relationship, building a relationship. And I have to reflect my role. My role as a trainer, maybe my role as a friend, or my role as let's say, a mentor. And I think to deal professional as a coach, you should be aware about that things. Of course, also the environment. Yeah, but I think that's something simple. Everyone is thinking about the best environment for their athletes, but not so many trainers, my opinion, or maybe more should. Maybe that's better. That's not a blame.
The politically correct way to state it.
That's right. So should thinking about just reflecting, what is my role in this moment talking to my athlete? I'm talking like a friend, talking like a trainer, talking like a mentor. And that
meaning like, which hat are you wearing at that one time?
Exactly.
Okay.
Totally right. And then my intention is more sustainable for building a process, because you never know when you talk as a trainer in the first moment what the athlete thinks about that. Mm-hmm. It could be like from something like, I know, talk on, and okay, now let's go. I know what
let's train.
On the other end, for example, okay, he said 12 repetitions. I should never do 13 because he said 12. So this is 2 points of the scale.
Those are like the two spectrums, right? Of like where someone would fall like whatever. Exactly. He doesn't know anything, not listening to his trainer, this trainer aspect, or these are 12 repetitions. But how does that fall into? I mean, you mentioned there's like a mentor hat, there's like a trainer hat. You know, there's the friend component, which I'm sure kind of blurs part of those. Like what, like how do you, like, I guess, how do you balance those, and how, maybe specifically like with Alex, like how did you kind of decide when to put on each hat?
Yeah, that's not easy. I mean, on the one hand, I think it's on different levels. If you're in a top performance at a professional level, then of course you have some, maybe you get a goal. You want to reach together with the athlete, and the athlete, there's a lot of effort to reach this goal. And then, of course, you have to think, okay, to reach this goal, we have to deal in a really professional way. And sometimes there are things maybe that athlete is not so happy with, but you have to say, yeah, but we just talked about the goals, and I cannot see something in between. We should follow that now. And that's the one thing. And the other thing is that you can just put it in different environments, so that the athlete knows, okay, we have our training time, there's a professional way, there's the trainer, he's talking, and sometimes he's talking serious, which has to be. And there is the time after training, where we come together, and yeah, we're just talking about different things, and then I'm more the friend, for example. When we go together on a holiday or on a climbing trip, then there are moments where I'm just a friend, or yeah, maybe I want to try a route. And for Alex, it's more, for example, the last years is so interesting. It was really important for him to see us, Dicky and me, climbing hard routes or doing a project together with him. Because he said, yeah, I'm feeling bad, you know, you come with me to this climbing trip, and I don't want you belaying all the time. I want you to have some fun, or seeing you motivated in a project. That's a really interesting thing, you know. And this is the time where you, play friends. Yeah, this is friendship time.
And maybe he needs that like external psych from you guys as well to keep him psyched on what he's doing.
Right, exactly. And yeah, then the mentor time is something which is kind of in between, where you can say, hey, I know about this and that, and I think that should the way, but considering your situation, in your private situation at the moment or whatever, just think about it and let's do like this. Or combining business goals with climbing goals. That's for a professional climber sometimes not so easy anymore. And the mentor aspect comes together, where I have to say, okay, this is the point where you have to decide. It's about business time, earning money, or it's about having fun. This is a decision you have to make now, to do now. That's for example some time where you have to deal like a mentor, or to talk like a mentor to an athlete, but more for professional climbers.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like, I mean, what maybe you would mentor a professional climber 10 years ago on business compared to now on business, that's like a whole nother thing. Yeah.
A whole other thing. Yeah. That's really, yeah.
So if you're working with athletes or teams, and things may be different in Germany than maybe like United States or other countries, and a climber comes up with some type of injury or something that's kind of nagging, what's the network you have, like, kind of where you're situated? Is it something that you're able to, like, if someone comes up, they have a little bit of soreness in their finger, is it kind of easy to manage? Are these things you have to kind of like outsource? I know that coaches like all over the world, depending on where they are coaching, have their own challenges with either what they can do within their scope of practice, what they're comfortable with, or what they have access to. How does that work kind of on your end? Like if someone has something that's nagging, or even if they have an injury that occurs, what happens?
Very, very interesting question. And we have this credo, like, you should do these things you have a good insight with, and you do a professional work. When you do these things, you are good at it, and you don't just talk about it, or I have heard that is good for you, or something like this. And I'm a sports scientist, I'm a trainer, I know about these things, I have the theoretical background, and I have the experience. But when it comes to some injuries, I'm not a professional, and I would never just giving some, let's say, when I see there's some injury or some overstress, I can of course say, okay, I would lower down your climbing.
Yeah.
For example, this is the thing I can talk about.
Yeah, you could adjust their training, their volume, their intensity.
Right, but things like talking about maybe this is the A2 pulley, or let's see, maybe this is the biceps anchor or a labrum injury. Hey, I would never do that, because I would deal really unprofessional with that. So I have this, let's say, network to like orthopedists, like Volker, who have the possibility to diagnose something, an osteopath or a physiotherapist. I know in, let's say, 2 or 3 different cities which are nearby, and I immediately say, okay, please go to a professional with that. I know someone I can give you an advice for a good physiotherapist who knows a lot about climbing, who is a climber for himself, and go there and just first make clear what it is. I mean, Volker has like, he's booked out for, I think, years.
I mean, you have some of the best resources in the world, like within like probably, a little bit driving. So, but you have your network, right? And you've developed, it sounds like, a network that you can kind of say, I'm comfortable with this, or I'm not comfortable with this. And, you can refer out if needed.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's so important to work in a good team. And it's the same with route setting. And I remember when we started the training process for the Olympic Games with Alex, we thought about, okay, we have to think about boulders on a level. We have to search for new partners. And we made partners with some gyms here in the local area with top level route setters.
Oh, interesting.
And we come together and said, okay, let's see here, we have this different challenges, and we are the trainers, but we're looking for route setters, and let's come together and let's bring this process on the way together. And that was a really for him a really valuable way to do it. And it is also from the route setters, it's the same. They have to should more consult also trainers with this training science background, or maybe a physiotherapist. I see this new school stuff. I mean, okay, for the adults, there is some risk of injury. It's in every sport. Yeah. Like in alpine skiing or whatever, you have a risk of injury. I mean, you can't neglect that. But for the youth and the kids, what I see sometimes, what they just set for boulders with so harsh dynamic moves, jumping in some stemming moves, I mean, that isn't necessary. And they should talk more with some physios or trainers. You don't need this,
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point. I think in climbing itself, the more collaboration, whether it's like interdisciplinary, like between like trainers, physios, route setters, coach, like on every aspect, or like even the example with Alex you were mentioning, where we need to diversify, the route setting. Let's get more, more setters for boulder problems in. It sounds like really collaborating, and especially with so much information out there now, like collaborating at the local level and then collaborating just kind of fully, almost like we're talking now, like this is, through, different countries, different methodologies, different ideas. I think it's such a good idea. And it's really, that is what will push the sport as well forward.
yeah. If there would be more collaboration with the different fields of in climbing, like route setting, physiotherapist, medical doctors, osteopaths, trainers, training science, movement science, I think there would be the next step to bring more stuff together. And maybe we are on the right way. I mean, I will not complain that is everything bad, and I often see also some good role models for that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, in closing, like as it relates to almost like climbers trying to stay resilient, trying to climb without injuries, is there any general tips or advice that you would say from your kind of years of experience, you know, your own self with your own injuries, or working with climbers and coaching from youth level to some of the top climbers, you know, in the world? What would be, if you were to have kind of like a take-home message, what would it be?
Most of the climbers, they neglect the mobility aspect. And when they think about mobility, they immediately think about, this, let's say, boring flexibility exercises. I have to do the split legs, and oh, that's pain. I always say, hey, I know flexibility training is the most boring training in the world. It's not like power training. You feel your muscles and you see your muscles. No, flexibility is like, whoa. But why don't you do some mobility exercises with some dynamic movement related exercises, which just not explode your range of motion, or but you can control the end of your range of motion better than before. But you have to stay on it, and it's always the same when I see from base level to top level, not all top, or let's say not to top level, but to close to top level, really good climbers, bouldering 8B, 8B plus, climbing 8C plus, 9A. When we go to the boulder gym, they start bouldering and they end bouldering, and that's their training. Or maybe some campus moves and strength training, but start the training with a 20 minutes, 30 minutes movement mobility session to prevent, for example, some overstress areas you maybe don't feel yet, but in half a year or 1 year. And from my experience, I can say in the end of 40s, I have not so much company around who is in my age trying with me this new school stuff with some sketchy moves and flexibility moves. But I tried to get into that stuff for years, and this mobility aspect helped me so much to change my climbing style and to stay healthy. I have, meanwhile, no problem in shoulder, elbow, knee, or whatever. I am feeling good all the way. And this is definitely related to my mobility training.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I'm sure there's a lot of resources climbers can kind of check out. I know you've put out a lot on how to train mobility, and you make a good point. It's not just stretching and being in some like one plane position, stretching one muscle. This is full body engaging exercises to keep climbers mobile.
Right. And I mean, this whole topic is exploding on Instagram, whatever. When you see there's so much input and output on this mobility channels, of course, you should get a plan out of it. That's my job as a coach. Everyone can look at Instagram and see thousands of exercises. My job as a coach is select them, and I always will, let's say, I can't give the reason why you should do it. What is the benefit about that? And my job as a coach is to analyze, maybe add on something on the exercise or change it a little bit. And I can always give a reason, why should I do that? Why should you do that? I can tell as a coach. That's my job. And yeah, what my experience is that some of these exercises or some modified exercises, they are really good and a good benefit to stay healthy and also to improve your climbing, to maybe be a kind of better climber in some ways, not in every way, of course, but you maybe a more comprehensive climber.
Well, Patrick, this is a ton of great information. Where can climbers find you? Is there, anywhere they can find your resources or any way that you can direct them?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I have the Instagram channel Craft Factory, which is like the German word craft, like coffee craft, and factory together as a word, Craft Factory on Instagram. You can just find some information there and write me a message. And there's Dicky and me on this channel, and also we have this an email address. It's like coaches@craftfactory.de for Germany, de Deutschland, .com. So yeah, you can find us there.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing information. I'm definitely going to be practicing a couple of these components that you talked about in some of the exercises. And hopefully at some point we can see each other in person. I know things are a little challenging with the pandemic, but it's great to connect with you.
Yeah, it was really great talk, and thanks to the talk and the interview. It was I really liked it. It was a pleasure for me.